The territory of Islam was spread by the sword, no problem. Okay? Islamic expansion, the empire of Islam, if you want to call it that, was spread by force. Militaries went into other countries and they conquered land. The religion, the faith was never forced upon people. That's the challenge. Yes, you understand? Racism is...
Your definition, tell me your definition of it.
My understanding of racism is...
Okay.
He's not tracking you.
My understanding of racism is... My understanding of racism is when...
Shut up, please.
Let's have a talk.
When you believe a race...
She's not what you think she is.
When you believe a race...
He doesn't know what
I know, that's why we're asking you a simple question.
Can I give the definition so that we
Please
can
give
know?
me a definition. Yeah,
Okay. Racism is when a person believes that a particular race is superior to other races in the world.
Or
Based upon physical abilities, color, culture, language, whatever it may be.
Okay, and do you agree with that definition?
I'm not in the word. I'm not in the definition.
Okay, you're talking to me. Do you accept this definition? You're talking to me.
Simple.
I am simple. Thank you.
So are you racist by that? Are you racist by that definition? No, wait, brother. Are you racist by that definition? Are you racist by
I
that?
do not believe that any race is superior over another race.
Okay, so you're not racist then?
No.
Okay.
Why you say that first, please?
That,
Because there are other definitions of racism out there.
So can I ask you?
She said the definition of religion is culturally of a particular kind. That's what she said. Ask her to define
why are you
religion.
so obsessed? I mean, can we have a conversation?
Because he jumped in.
Okay. Are you a Christian? Because you were having a conversation with
So,
us.
Can I
the
ask
reason
you one
why
question
this
on
is
that
important
basis?
is because...
Bro, listen.
Just calm down.
bro, listen.
Calm down. There's no point of shouting. Calm down. Okay, let's have a conversation. Can you stop entertaining him? You're entertaining him.
The reason why it's important,
Sometimes
we
it's important
understand
to-
what the definition of racism specifically is because in popular culture now, if you go to university, they will tell you
Just ignore
that
it.
racism is when you have power and authority and control over another group. And they will say the only people who can be racist are white people. And that is a particular definition of racism.
Can we
so
ask-
I'm trying to explain
Do you
to
agree with that
school
definition?
that there are
Okay.
more than one definition of
Okay,
racism.
now this. Can you stop talking to, because there's no conversation.
Bro, let's all calm down,
Okay.
guys.
Now with that, can you leave him alone? You're obsessed with him. Can you leave him alone? We want to have a conversation on this.
He left.
They're annoying.
Yeah, but don't-
They need to
We have to learn to ignore
He
sometimes.
left.
Okay.
Right.
Can we? Yeah.
Can I ask you, based on that definition that Adnan has said, right? On what basis do you say I will join the religion that has more of my race, that has the white? You told me because I believe religion is ethnicity. I told you Islam was not. I gave you statistics that Muslims are more.
Because I believe that race and culture, ethnicity and heritage are all interlinked together.
Yes, they are.
I would like to be among my own people.
Sure.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Feeling.
I believe that if you like you say that Islam promotes good morals, I also believe that Christianity promotes good morals.
That's fine.
Therefore, I would prefer to be with Christians, right, who are people like me.
Right.
I can
Okay.
promote the morals
But would you
either way.
like to be with Christians who happen to be Africans? For example, Zulus, or let's say.
I probably wouldn't want to hang out with them.
Or even the Middle Eastern Christians.
Okay. Is it? Wait. We're having a conversation. Can you ignore him? We're having a conversation.
So you just need to
We're having a conversation.
triggered by him.
You're getting triggered by him.
You should ignore him.
Yeah, ignore. Completely.
If your religion is irrelevant, you should not.
Yes.
He thinks he's got an idea.
Why?
I think you have dealt with him. Let's move on.
Let's
Okay.
focus on
Do you call yourself Christian?
At the moment,
She
no.
said agnostic. She believes in a higher power.
I
Let's say.
believe in a higher power.
Then you can believe
I
in
can
anything.
say I am a cultural Christian or pragmatically Christian at the moment, meaning I will align myself with
But
Christianity.
the point is, Adnan, that she told me the last thing she was going to become a Muslim. I asked her why. I would say, why is the last thing you say?
In,
you're gonna become
in other words,
Muslim?
if she was during the time of the white kings and they were all white, she would be a white king. Yeah. So I don't think
Well,
religion.
no,
maybe
this-
you should ask her to define
There,
religion.
there are, look,
I think
what
that's a
she
mix of
said,
culture and religion.
what she said culturally, there's nothing wrong with that. If you feel comfortable with your own kind, that's not racism.
No, that's
okay.
called- it's called
that's,
culture.
Yeah, it's called
So she's a
culture.
cultural
You feel comfortable.
person.
For example, I happen to be from Pakistan, right? I relate to the Pakistani culture. I relate to the sense of humor. I can relate to it. I may not be very, how can I put it? I cannot possibly relate to the Arab culture, although I happen to be a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, I relate more with the Pakistani culture,
No, the
right?
reason-
If she relates to a particular culture,
The reason I said that is because
yeah.
when she defined religion earlier, it seemed like she was defining culture.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
but-
you want to
I'm saying
can you
that-
define
I'm
religion
saying
again so
that-
we don't
that
misinterpret you?
European culture, or at least in the UK, is based on Christian values.
What is your definition of religion?
I said that is an expression of an ethnic group, generally.
See what I mean? That's not religion.
Okay, no, that's not. No, wait.
Making no
Brother,
sense.
just be patient. Just be patient and listen.
The imbecile?
Reason, no. That's your view. I don't believe she's imbecile. Okay.
What do you
No.
define as culture?
Okay. No, wait, that's being disrespectful.
No, you're doing the same.
Okay. Now,
No, it's
yeah. Okay.
Okay, so do you believe
So you're saying
your definition of religion is different to ours?
Come on, I need an
your
answer.
definition,
You
your
don't mind.
Talk, please.
your.
What's his definition of religion?
What's your definition of religion?
No, wait. This doesn't seem to be a conversation, man. I think we should.
Do you believe in that
No,
definition of religion?
listen, I have to admit to you that I'd have to think about it a bit more, right? But I do think that religion often is an expression of an ethnic group, and maybe in the future, maybe what happens is once it's been defined, then it starts to try.
Where do you get this theory from?
Can I tell you something? Look,
And that is what
Adnan here is
no,
from
I'm not
Pakistan.
saying, listen, I'm not saying that everyone. I'm not saying that everyone in Islam is an Arab. Right?
I'm an Arab.
Let me tell you that
I'm
Quran
saying that a particular culture that he promotes, right? And
is
then
what? What
We're not agreeing with what she's saying,
Which
but we're trying to have a
which,
conversation.
You know, when Islam came, it abandoned the Arab culture, many of the Arabic culture that
Yeah.
they had at the time. So Arabs had a culture to bury their own daughters alive. Arabs had a culture of burying their own daughters alive.
was
Arabs
pre-Islam.
had a culture of being naked around the Kaaba and circling around the Kaaba. Arabs had many cultures of raping women.
Actually, no.
Islam have abandoned these things.
There is another issue. Ethnically, the Arabs were very male-dominated, male-chauvinistic, right? Islam came with rules that went against their norms, their cultural norms, and they had a problem with that. For example,
I'm glad that
Islam.
you admit that Islam is not necessarily male-dominated, because I agree.
It's not.
And we
It's
don't
not.
believe it's a culture. We
No,
don't
no.
believe
It's not. It's okay. Okay.
It's actually quite
In fact, in Islam, there are certain injunctions. They
Keep talking. It's my lag.
She's smelling.
okay. So
my back is there.
there are certain injunctions in Islam that, if anything,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
if anything,
Is it a bag? A bike is there.
You need to just bring her back.
someone's smoking ganja again. I'm sorry. I don't know why they insist on.
Yeah, I wonder if his religion is that.
Okay. Someone who follows the religion of ganja,
So,
and that's socially
I
acceptable.
think the definition of religion which you gave was incorrect.
No, let us come back to the women issue. In Islam came with certain rules that actually gave more honor to women than men. Okay,
no, I agree.
okay. In
But I
fact,
hear a lot of people in the UK saying that Islam is
so your theory.
I actually don't agree
Let me explain something. The Prophet said, anyone who prefers sons over daughters, or in fact the other way around, anyone who does not prefer sons over daughters will be in paradise with me. In other words, he's saying, prefer your daughters. They bring more mercy from God than your sons do. So that's what the Prophet said, right? This was going against the cultural norms of the Arabs. The Arabs were shocked. What are you saying, man? But they had to follow it. So this goes against your theory that it was an expression of an ethnicity. No, it was not a cultural expression of ethnicity. Rather, Islam seemed to be going everything against the Arabs believed in, right? And no, let us determine that. Okay, so now So your theory doesn't make sense when it comes to Islam. No, ignore, please ignore. Your theory doesn't make sense when it comes to Islam. Okay, Islam was not a cultural expression of an ethnic group. Rather, the teachings of Islam went against almost everything that ethnic group had already believed in. Okay, so this is why we, being in Pakistan, some from Morocco, some from Egypt, some from Bangladesh, okay, the largest stretch of land, okay, from Africa, Islam is all over. It's the most common thing about all these regions, so like Christianity. Christianity is all over the world, but the difference between Christianity and Islam is Christianity was mainly spread by colonialism. Okay, Africa, sub-Saharan Africa was not Christian. 2 centuries ago, before the year 1800, Africa was not Christian. I can tell you that with certainty, right? South America only became Christian when the Spanish landed on these islands, So Christianity was actually spread by colonialism. Islam was not spread like that.
How was Islam spread?
Islam was adopted by the people predominantly voluntarily. For example, the Muslim governments in the early period did not have a policy to follow.
That is not what
What did you hear? What did you hear?
I heard that it was.
Brother,
I've also heard that it's spread by the sword.
Sorry, what did you hear?
Spread by the sword.
I'm interested. Okay. Now that claim is partly true. Let me explain. I'll tell you how. No, let me explain. Let me explain.
He has caveats. He's not
You see, that's the problem. I said half the sentence and you jump to the conclusion. Wait. Partly true in what sense? The territory of Islam was spread by the sword. No problem. Okay? Islamic expansion, the empire of Islam, if you want to call it that, was spread by force. Militaries went into other countries and they conquered land. The religion, the faith was never forced upon people. That's the challenge. Yes, you understand? Okay. For example, as late as the 12th century, Christianity was the majority. Okay, are you listening? I mean, if let me explain it. Okay, and you can ask me for the evidence, and I'll give you the evidence if you are interested. If you're not interested, there's nothing I can do. Okay, yeah. I'm telling you that historically, the Byzantines, the Romans, and the Persians, and the North African tribes, and the government in Spain was defeated militarily. Muslim armies went there and they defeated them. Okay, they took all this territory by force. There is no doubt, unashamedly. These are historic facts. Okay, now conversion. When it comes to conversion, you show me the evidence where people were mass converted forcefully in the entire history of Islam. If it's true, I'm telling you the territory was taken by force, no doubt. Okay, because they were. Now, why did they take the territory by force is a very good question. It's a big question. Historians have debated for centuries on these topics.
That's what happens.
How could, if they take the territory by force, how could they then voluntarily
convert?
submit to
Okay, now that's a good question. What the Muslims did when they went.
Wouldn't the
Okay.
people that went by force then
I'm going to answer your question.
Everything they can to get everyone.
I'm going to answer your question.
Like, giving taxes to people that are not.
All religions at
Muslims.
some point have forced people to convert.
Yes, I
All.
agree with you there.
but let's.
Giving taxes to people that are not Muslims, and discriminating against them in certain kind of ways. There's various incentives that they can do.
Yes. So now if you're talking about.
I have heard. I told you I'm not an expert. So.
I am not an expert, I'm a student, and I can only give you what I have studied, right? Incentives to convert to a new faith, there is nothing wrong with that. If you give people incentives, if you come to power, for example, wait. If you come to power, okay, and you hold the government, and you give incentives to people to come to a faith you consider to be the truth, then there's nothing wrong with that. But actually let me finish. Let me explain. Right? Okay. Forcing people to accept a faith is absolutely abhorrent.
It's forbidden.
It is forbidden in Islam. There's a verse in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 256, which categorically states there is no compulsion in religion. Let the truth stand clear from falsehood. In other words, let people decide. If you have taken lands, you cannot force Christians to convert. You cannot force Hindus to convert. You cannot force pagans to convert to Islam. And this is why one thing we are proud of as Muslims, we are proud of our civilization. Okay, why? Because we can tell you with certainty that our civilization did not do what the Christians did in South America or even North America, what they did in Africa, okay, what the European colonial powers did in India. We can tell you that with certainty. The Muslim civilization is free of those crimes. Okay, there were periods of. Well, bring you evidence.
I'll have to go and do some research.
I'll tell you about the exceptions. There were exceptions. Now, having said all that, there were exceptions where justice was abandoned. Certain kings, certain individuals, they went out of the way of Islam. Okay, I don't know why this guy's shouting. Okay.
Yeah, finish your point.
Right. So the point is, when you study the history of Islam, in Spain, there were mass conversions. In India, there were mass conversions. In India, the largest conversion happened in Bengal, okay, and in the Punjab region, in India, okay. Millions of people converted to Islam from Hinduism or from Buddhism, from other faiths, right? Why? Go and study why. Were they forced into Islam? Okay, right? Syria and Egypt remained Christian until the 12th century. The majority of the people in these lands were Christian. What changed in the 12th and the 13th and the 14th century? Okay, mass conversion, were they forced into conversion? No. Spain, majority of the people who were expelled from Spain in 1609 by Catholics. By Catholics in 1609, there was a mass expulsion of Moriscos. Moriscos was a term used against Spanish Muslims, okay? And 90% of these Spanish Muslims were Hispanic, ethnically Hispanic. They were not Berbers and Arabs. Berbers and Arabs were always a minority in Spain. So why did these people convert to Islam voluntarily? There was mass conversion in the 9th century, in the 10th century, in the 11th century Spain. Why? Because these people around the world, they saw the beauty of the Muslim civilization. They felt comfortable with the faith. They felt that it's intellectually more stimulating, more satisfying. It's better than the doctrine of the Trinity and all the other problems that come with the Christian faith. They accept it wholeheartedly, and they still remain Muslim, right? There are Christians to this day in the Muslim lands. Okay, the oldest Christian community in the world is in Egypt. The Coptic Christians, they're still there. They still have churches, and they are still converting in the thousands, and people are claiming they are being forcefully converted. How can you forcefully convert people in Egypt today?
The oldest churches are in the Middle East.
Okay. So all of this, okay, is very clear. Go and study histories. Now I'm not claiming a utopia. I'm not saying the empire of Islam or the Muslim civilization was perfect. It was paradise on earth. Okay, it was My Little Pony land. It was not like that with rainbows and stars and ponies flying around. It wasn't like that.
There's exceptions.
Okay, there was no place like that in the world. Okay, so Islam, despite all the difficulties of the times, you know, these times in the Middle Ages, they were barbaric times, uncivilized times, right? Islam offered the best solution. The civilization of Islam stood as a beacon of light for the whole world. The best universities, the best scholars, the best thinkers, the best philosophers.
If you replace the word Islam with Christian, you're making the same argument.
No. Let's talk about it.
colonialism?
You know this book? It happens to be in my hand here. Okay? You know what this book is? Witchcraft and Magic in the 16th and 17th. Christian Europe was burning hundreds of thousands of women alive. They were burnt literally 100 meters from here, Tyburn gallows. Women were being burnt at stake. Women. For witchcraft, okay? Christian Europe, transatlantic slave trade, the most barbaric
So you don't agree with capital punishment then?
No, we do.
Slavery is not capital
We do.
Okay, so
But
what's the
burning
difference
burning is not a
between
capital punishment. Okay, burning
They
women.
they would condemn a free woman as a witch and they would be burnt alive.
Yes.
And this was quite.
But that was happening in Christian Europe.
I'm not going to go into debate about it. I'm just saying that bringing up women burnt alive is not going to work
Look,
because I have no sympathy about the fact
to be
that they're
fair,
women.
to be
If
fair,
they're being punished for a crime, I don't care.
We have to be fair. We have to be fair. When we talk about societies, when we talk about religions and their social histories, we have to be fair. Okay, there were isolated incidents in the Muslim world where here and there things happened. Okay, but that was never the norm. It never continued for centuries. In Christian Europe, for centuries, from 14. Now let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me finish.
No, but he's talking about the
Let me
persecution, not the
finish.
capital punishment.
Let me
He's
finish.
talking about the persecution.
From the year 1450 to 1750, hundreds of thousands of women were burnt at stake, and in some cases burnt with green wood, so that the punishment is severe.
I think you are personally. I'll be honest, and you tell me whether I'm right or
You're
wrong.
not going to elicit
I understand.
sympathy from the women.
Okay.
Fair enough,
I want to
fair
make a point.
But
I
it's
want to make a point.
persecution we're talking about.
I want to make a point.
Anti-gynocentric.
I think you
I'm not
are.
using the woman card again.
I think you're not defending Christianity, are you?
Okay.
You are not trying to defend Christianity in any way, shape, or
What I'm
form.
trying to
So
say is
so
that what the arguments you're making to me about Islam, if you said the word Christianity, you were going, Christianity was a beacon of the world.
I know you don't care.
Then
She's not
it would
Christian
be
in-
very
in
similar.
general, so
Like it
she's-
sounds exactly the same. The
I know.
arguments sound the same.
Okay, let me clarify something.
give her some.
Okay, Christian world has offered amazing things to the world. What we call Christendom. Christendom, there were scholars, there were philosophers, there were thinkers. At the same time, socially speaking, Christendom devastated the world in many ways. Okay, colonialism came from Christendom. Witch burning came from Christendom.
Slavery.
Okay, Atlantic slave trade was predominantly managed by and from Christendom. Okay, heretic burning. You're okay. So what do you want me to say? Am I making these claims? These are false claims? Do you want to borrow this book from me? You want to go and read it? Okay.
I'm shaking my head about the slave trade comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Wait. Let me ask you a question. Show me an alternative or a parallel to Atlantic slave trade in the Muslim world.
Actually, they use the Bible to justify the slave trade in many cases.
Yes.
They did justify it.
I'm not sticking up for that.
I'm asking for parallels. I'm asking for parallels.
I'm telling you that the slave trade was not just committed by.
No, that's what he's saying.
Okay.
At an
I'm not
industrial
saying
scale,
that.
no, at an
I am
industrial
not
scale,
saying
they
that.
did.
I am not saying that. I'm saying
saying-
there was slavery in the Muslim world, no doubt.
Not at an industrial scale like the
you
Europeans.
I'm not. The Atlantic
This is
slave
called
trade was not
chattel.
worse.
Chattel
It was not
slavery.
worse.
Okay. Now,
It was not worse.
Listen
it
to
could
my-
be equivalent. You can make that.
what's your
It was
name?
not worse.
What's your name?
No, it was not worse.
What's your name?
Natty.
Nati. Listen to my questions carefully. Nati, listen to my questions carefully. Give me a parallel to Atlantic slave trade in the Muslim civilization. Number one.
From
Wait.
history. All history.
Give me a parallel in the Muslim civilization. Give me a parallel to or of witch burnings. Give me a parallel in the Muslim lands for 1,000 years of Muslim civilization, heretic burnings. Give me a parallel to or of colonialism in the civilization of Islam. There are four ideas. Give me a parallel.
You just told me earlier that there were basically colonialism with the spread of Islam already going and taking
No, it
territory.
was not colonialism, no.
What's the difference?
Okay. The difference was when Muslims took these lands, okay, they established order.
Yes.
They told every single religious group to go and worship as they like, stay in your churches, in your synagogues, in your temples, right? And you can flourish. And we know from the history of the Muslim civilization, the Jewish communities and the Christian communities generally flourished from Spain to India, all the way from Spain to India, generally they flourished. Okay, they were not mass murdered, they were not burnt at stake, they were not. You know what happened to Jews in Europe? Do you have any idea of anti-Semitism in Europe? Okay. Do you know what happened to Muslims in Europe? Okay. So you cannot find a parallel of that in the Muslim lands. Fortunately, to this day, if anyone tries to commit a massacre against non-Muslim community, you know the Muslims will be the first one to fight them.
Really?
Yeah, it's part of our faith.
I don't believe that.
You don't have to believe that. You don't have to believe that for it to be
I
true.
don't believe that for a second, I'm sorry.
Okay, tell me
Your
why.
knowledge is based on hearsay. Not
Tell
from
me
the
why.
scripture.
Your belief is, yeah.
It's based on hearsay.
You don't want. I mean, tell me why you don't believe it. Is it your heart not accepting it because there is prejudice against Islam or bias against Islam?
Is there any other reason why you're saying I'm not going to become Muslim other than
No,
that
forget Muslim.
No. I want.
Why are you saying I don't believe that?
It's prejudice.
Ask me. Ask. Okay, what you should be
That's
doing.
the only reason you have.
As a sincere person, Natty, you should be asking me, where is the evidence for these things you're claiming? And I will tell you where to go and study. And not.
Tell me where to go and study then.
Okay. On what topic? Jews and Islam?
No, you said to me, give me a parallel. Give me a parallel where Islam is not as many bad things as colonialism. Why should I study that? Because I don't believe it.
If you want to study the history of Muslim civilization, I'm answering her
You
question.
might want to mention crusades as well.
Okay. Yeah, we forgot about crusades.
Exactly.
We forgot about crusades. Okay.
They kill even the Christians.
The problem is, are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Okay. I've had a long discussion with Kay last week, so let us continue with that discussion. I'll give you references to go and study, not from Muslim scholars, not for an imam from a mosque who wrote a book and he thinks Islamic civilization was the greatest thing that happened to humanity. I'm going to give you European scholarship, Western scholars who are not Muslims, and they're not being paid by Saudi Arabia to write these books. Okay, these books will show you how the Muslim civilization, okay, led the world in fields of education, fields of tolerance, fields of philosophy, fields like intellectual activity, okay, and even scientific technology, okay. And these fields are not necessarily the criteria we use to judge a civilization, right? Because others have done it. Romans did it, Greeks did it, right? But the greatest achievement of Islam and Muslims was a flourishing coexistence between three Abrahamic faiths. Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived together side by side for centuries. For centuries. In fact, the Jewish people found refuge from Christian persecution in Muslim lands. When the Jews, yeah, absolutely. Spain,
Toledo.
Spain, Ottoman lands, Salonika, the city of Salonika. You want to talk to me?
I'm just asking you, do you mean at the time when it was Islamic?
Anyway,
Yes,
listen.
Muslim Spain, yes.
Listen, I don't, as I said to you before,
So the history
I gave you my reasons, and
Can I give you some books?
everything you're saying to me now just tells me that it's just as bad as Christianity in terms of
Maybe you're not listening to maybe you're listening to someone else, not listening to me.
Sorry.
Because I haven't said anything like that. I'm telling you, there's no comparison between Christendom and the Muslim civilization. On many.
I think they're probably about as bad as each other.
Okay, let's talk about it. I'm asking you, give me a
Can I ask you
parallel. Give me a
I
parallel.
just want to finish the conversation.
Okay. Can I ask you a last question?
Muhammad, let me clarify something to you. Why am I insisting there's no parallel? Let me quickly finish. Let me finish.
What I'm saying is that
Let me quickly finish.
what I think is what we all try to deny all the time is that we think that, you know,
Okay, wait.
our truth is the way and our group is
I'm not
better
saying
than anyone
that.
else.
I am not
blah,
saying that.
blah, blah.
I've already acknowledged
And
that
to
the
be a good
Muslim
person-
civilization was not perfect. I've already said it.
Exactly.
But there's no comparison. Let me explain what I mean by
I
that.
don't agree with that.
Let me explain.
I
Let me
think you're probably
explain.
just as bad.
Oh my God.
No, but
Okay,
you're
can I
not.
ask-
The problem is,
given
wait.
any
I'm
substantiation.
Natty.
saying the only reason.
Wait, one second. Natty, can you come into the listening mode? Can you come into the
I'm
listening mode?
listening. I want to
Okay.
finish the
Now listen to me.
conversation now,
Now
because it's
listen to me.
getting late.
Okay. Now listen to me.
This turned into me having
Do you know
a
what
chat with
happened?
him and it's turned
Okay,
to this.
Natty.
So I have been quiet all this time. because-
Natty.
Yes.
Do you know what happened during the Atlantic slave trade period? For 4 centuries. Do you know what happened to the Africans?
I told you, I am not an expert.
Yeah, but you said it's just as bad without giving any evidence.
You say it's just as bad.
Exactly.
I'm showing you why it is not as bad. This is all I'm doing. I'm trying to show you
At least
why
he's
this is
substantiating what
not
he said.
as bad.
Natty,
Okay, let me explain what happened.
Listen,
Do you know?
tell me that the Atlantic slave
I want to make
trade was the worst slave
I want to make.
trade.
I want to make.
don't agree with
I will
you.
make a point. I will make a point. Look, Natty, wait.
Well, Natty has to leave, no problem.
It's okay.
You see, so the point is,
Maybe just summarize.
so let us summarize. We are not saying Islamic civilization is perfect. We've never claimed
All
that.
the
It was,
Muslims
not,
are
it was
perfect.
never a utopia. What we're saying is, comparatively, for over 1,000 years, what was going around in the rest of the world, the Muslim lands were far more progressive, tolerant, and enlightened than the rest of the world. That's all we are saying. There were crimes in the Muslim world, some major, some minor, okay? There were pogroms. In fact, there are examples of massacres against certain communities. But these were exceptional cases. If in 1,000 years you had 3 or 4 cases of such pogroms, that doesn't mean the entire civilization was rotten. No. But when you have for 4 centuries something going on, for 4 centuries,
Actually,
a
more-
phenomenon
in,
is alive.
In India, it was more than that.
Yeah,
8
absolutely.
centuries.
Okay,
And they remained as a minority most of the time.
yeah.
They remained minority, the Muslims in Mughal time.
Look, Atlantic slave trade, let me explain what happened. Africans were picked up from West Africa, okay? They were brutalized. Firstly, their journey from land to the coast was so barbaric, so unbelievable, so incredible that sometimes when you read about it, you can't believe it. That how humans can do this to other humans. They were put in chains, and then when they came to the port, they were locked up. They were put into ships in spaces like 6 by 2, right? And they would remain in that position for weeks. Some of them would die of dysentery or food poisoning or all sorts of diseases, and then they would be dumped into the sea. In fact, it is claimed by some scholars that the numbers of the people who were picked up from Africa during this period, 4 centuries of Atlantic slave trade, they go somewhere between 100 million to 11 million. Minimum 11 million Africans, maximum 100 million. Okay? And about 20 to 30% of them were dumped into the sea, depending on what number you follow. They were thrown into the sea for insurance scams. Because some of the companies here, you know, by the way, Barclays Bank,
Lloyds.
okay, Lloyds or Barclays? Lloyds.
Barclays didn't
No,
exist.
Barclays, even Barclays. Yeah, even, I mean,
Because I know Lloyds is the oldest.
no, actually Lloyds. Or Hong Kong and Shanghai, you know HSBC, they had shares in slave trade, and there were other companies, for example, some of them still exist to this day, they had shares in slave trade, right? This was the most brutal form of slavery known to humanity. Potentially the second worst form of slavery after the Roman slavery.
I think this was worse than Roman.
Okay.
if you ask me.
Some may argue it
definitely
was
worse.
worse. It was
Industrial
worse
scale,
than-
bro. Industrial scale.
Yes, absolutely. Some of
don't
these
think the
African men,
Romans
some of these West African men, some of them as tall as 6.5 feet, right? Picked up from West Africa. They would be transported to Brazil, places like Brazil, because the majority went to Brazil. They would be worked to death within 2 to 3 years. Stocky, healthy, big men from West Africa, they would be worked to death within 2 to 3 years. Right? So we have no parallel of that, thankfully, in our civilization. There were miscarriages of justice, no doubt. But nothing was like that, nothing. And there are many more examples we talk about.
One
Thank
of
you
her
so much.
contention was the jizya. That she said the taxes is not something that was fair on the non-believers.
This is
That
a
was one of the
charge.
contentions.
This is a charge thrown against Muslims very often, that jizya was a tax imposed on people, and it was very heavy. It may be so. In certain cases, some rulers may have stepped outside of their
Misappropriated.
limits. Yeah, absolutely. But generally, jizya was charged from working men who could afford it, businessmen. Now the poor, the needy, the elderly, women and children were completely exempt. This was a tax paid to the state for the well-being and the protection of the Christian and Jewish quarters. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, jizya was charged for certain services provided by the Islamic domain.
I find it's for humiliation. Isn't that what it says in the Quran?
Now, for example, Christians farmed pigs. They farmed pigs. Christians produced wine. They were perfectly allowed to do so, right? And jizya was charged, in order to protect Christians against any threats of violence or insecurity.
Why does the Quran say that its purpose
So
is
those Christians who wanted to do military service, for example, there were Christians who wanted to take part in military campaigns with the Muslims. They were completely exempted from jizya, right? So jizya is not as a black and white topic as some Christians and Islamophobes
And
throw
the
it.
ones who paid jizya, they were exempted from military duties.
Yes, absolutely.
So the men,
So the
the men were
Christians,
exempted, yeah.
Christians and Jews who paid jizya didn't have to do military service, and those who did do military service, they were
the jizya.
exempted from jizya.
Why
So
are you pretending
jizya,
that it's
if
not about
if
humiliation?
it was for humiliation only, then these Christians who did military service would be humiliated. They would not be allowed to do military
and
service.
how does the amount compare to the zakat?
The amount was about,
compared to the
for the rich, it was 1 gold coin per year, which is like 4 grams of gold. About, in current value, 120 pounds. About 120 pounds per year. Okay. Now, comparatively, if you do a comparison between zakat and jizya, Muslims in all cases were paying more than the Christians.
And it was including the
Muslims
women.
are always, because Muslims are paying a percentage, 2.5% of their savings, right? If there's a Muslim, for example, who happens to have £1 million, let's say in current value, in his bank account, he would pay to the state £25,000 every year on that amount. If a Jewish man had that money in a bank account, £1 million, he would be paying £120 on that amount every year.
1 gold coin.
So
That varies according
those
to the
who
schools of
claim
Islamic law, doesn't it?
those who claim that it was humiliation are simply bigots, Islamophobes, and liars, malicious liars.
Zakat is due also on the women.
bigoted when it says that.
Not just the men. Zakat is due also on the women.
Absolutely.
Is the Quran
Zakat.
bigoted?
Unlike
By the
the-
way, thank you for that. Okay. By the way, anyone who wants to read about jizya and the details about jizya, the tafsir of Qurtubi, Imam Qurtubi's tafsir, Imam Qurtubi's tafsir of Surah 9, verse 29 is one of the best places to go and read the details of the rights of Ahlul Dhimma and rules regarding jizya. You will be blown away. You'll be shocked. In fact, you will think, subhanAllah, this is more than the Muslims get.
Of course, yeah.
This is more than the Muslims get in
If
any
anyone
state.
had the right to complain, it would be
And
the
we're not trying to paint the picture of Islam as if, it was a utopia, it was paradise on earth. No. It wasn't like it was not like that for anyone throughout the Middle Ages. Times were tough, life was tough. Okay, there were wars, rebellions, disturbances, political upheavals, all of that was happening. But despite all that, the Muslims, wherever they had the chance, they protected the Jews and the Christians against any form of persecution or insecurity. In fact, the Jewish golden age was under the House of Islam in Spain in particular, if not in North Africa and in the Ottoman lands. The Jews flourished during the Ottoman period. The city of Salonika, which is in Greece today, was under Ottoman rule for as late as the 20th century. In 1912, I think Salonika was given to Greece. Until then, Salonika was a center of Jewish activity. Jews flourished under the rule of Islam in Ottoman territories. There was a Jewish quarter in the city of Istanbul. There was an entire Jewish community in Jerusalem. And there's a Jewish scholar called Amnon Cohen. Amnon Cohen has written on the life of the Jewish people in Ottoman Jerusalem. Go and read about it. Go and read about it. Likewise, there's a book written by another Jewish scholar, Mark Cohen. Mark Cohen has written a book, Under the Crescent and the Cross. The title of the book is Under the Crescent and the Cross. In this book, he argues that the Jews lived a far better life in the Muslim lands than they did in Christendom. Why are these Jewish scholars, some of them happen to be Zionists, why are they saying this? And in fact, Zionist scholars, a lot of them are very hostile to the idea of Jewish golden age under the House of Islam. There are many scholars who happen to be Israeli. They don't like this idea. Because why? Because a lot of Muslims are presenting this idea as an alternative to what's happening in Israel today. Now look, when you lived with us as Jews, how we treated you. And look what you're doing to the Palestinians today. So that's why they completely disowned the idea. They said that this idea doesn't exist. There was no Jewish golden age under the rule of Islam. But there are Jewish scholars from the 19th century, and even today, right, they acknowledge that the Jews, they flourished like never before in the entire history. And this is what the point is. The point is, what is the history of the Jewish people? The diaspora, what is it? For 2,000 years, the Jewish people, they suffered. Okay, as late as the 20th century, when Hitler committed another massacre, a genocide against the Jewish people. But what was the best period in the Jewish history? It was under the rule of Islam in Spain, when Jews flourished for centuries, right? Some of the best Jewish scholars, scientists, thinkers, philosophers, poets were produced in Cordoba, under the rule of Islam, when Muslims governed for nearly 3 centuries. Okay, there were Jewish prime ministers. So all of this, the credit goes to Islam and the Muslim civilization. Jazakumullah khairan for listening. Assalamu alaikum.